I'm so thrilled to be here. We're thrilled to have you. This energy is amazing. It's electric.
For a few uncomfortable minutes on live television, a daytime talk show stopped feeling like entertainment and started feeling like a public reckoning. Subscribe to the Truth Narrator, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What unfolded between Nicki Minaj and Joy Behar was not a shouting match, not a viral screaming clip, and not a rehearsed exchange meant to trend on social media. It was quieter than that, sharper than that, a moment where tone, timing, and one line of questioning exposed just how fragile the balance can be between celebrity influence and public responsibility on live TV. To understand why that moment mattered, you have to understand who was sitting at that table. Nicki Minaj was not just another musical guest making a promotional stop. By the time her name became part of the discussion on The View, she was already one of the most influential and controversial figures in modern pop culture. A global rap icon, a trendsetter, and a celebrity whose words online could reach tens of millions in seconds. She had built a career on boldness, confidence, and saying exactly what she thought, no matter who agreed. Joy Behar, on the other hand, represented something very different. A veteran co-host of The View, known for her sharp commentary, political awareness, and willingness to challenge public figures on sensitive issues. Behar had spent years questioning politicians, actors, authors, and public personalities without softening her stance. Her role on the show was not to flatter guests. It was to ask the question viewers at home were already thinking. And The View itself was not just another talk show. It was a live platform where entertainment met current events, where celebrity interviews often collided with politics, culture, and public opinion. What made the program powerful was also what made it risky. There was no script that could fully control what might happen once the conversation began. The tension between Nicki Minaj and the hosts of The View did not begin in the studio. It started online days earlier, when a tweet from Minaj sent shockwaves across social media and into mainstream news coverage. In September 2021, as governments and media outlets around the world encouraged COVID-19 vaccinations, Nicki Minaj posted a message on Twitter that quickly went viral. She shared a story about a cousin's friend allegedly experiencing severe side effects after receiving a vaccine. The tweet raised eyebrows, sparked debate, and triggered an avalanche of responses from medical professionals, journalists, politicians, and everyday users. Suddenly, a rapper's personal anecdote became a global headline. Health officials responded. News networks discussed it. Social media erupted. And daytime talk shows, including The View, dedicated entire segments to analyzing what she had said. That is where Joy Behar entered the story. On The View, Behar and the panel openly discussed Minaj's tweet. They did not treat it like celebrity gossip. They treated it as a public health concern. Behar questioned the responsibility that comes with having millions of followers. She challenged the idea of spreading unverified claims during a global crisis. The tone was serious, not playful, and viewers noticed. For many, it felt like a talk show host directly confronting a pop star's influence without that pop star being present to respond. For others, it felt like necessary accountability. But for fans of Nicki Minaj, it felt like their favorite artist was being publicly criticized on national television. The conversation did not stay on television. Clips from The View circulated online. Nicki Minaj saw them. She responded on social media, defending her position and questioning the criticism directed at her. Now, the story had two sides playing out in real time. A daytime talk show discussing a celebrity's statements, and that celebrity pushing back from her own platform. And that is what made the eventual meeting so tense. Because when Nicki Minaj later appeared in conversations connected to The View and its hosts, it was no longer just an interview opportunity. It was an unresolved public exchange waiting to happen in front of a live audience. By the time cameras were rolling, viewers at home were not just watching a celebrity segment. They were watching to see if the subject that had already divided audiences would be addressed directly. Would Joy Behar ask about it? Would Nicki Minaj bring it up herself? Or would both sides avoid it and pretend it never happened? The uncertainty was the tension. Nicki Minaj had built her career on being fearless in interviews. She had challenged radio hosts, called out critics, and defended herself without hesitation. Silence was never her style. At the same time, Joy Behar had a reputation for not ignoring controversial topics just to keep a segment comfortable. The audience could feel it before a word was spoken. This was not just a promotional appearance. This was a live television moment where two strong personalities, already connected by a public disagreement, were about to share the same space without edits, without filters, and without the protection of social media's delay. And what made it even more compelling was the setting. Daytime television is built on politeness. Smiles, laughter, casual conversation. But underneath that format, The View has always carried a sharper edge. Political debates, cultural clashes, uncomfortable questions that guests do not always expect. Nicki Minaj was walking into a space where the hosts had already publicly questioned her. Joy Behar was sitting across from someone who had publicly defended herself against that questioning. It was a rare situation where both sides knew exactly what the other had said beforehand. The stakes were not about embarrassment. They were about credibility, about responsibility, about who gets to speak, who gets to question, and what happens when celebrity influence meets live television accountability. As the cameras prepared to roll, producers could not predict whether this would be a routine segment or a moment people would replay for years. Viewers sensed that something unscripted might happen, because sometimes the most uncomfortable television does not come from shouting or chaos. It comes from a single question asked calmly, and a single response that changes the mood of the entire room. And in this case, that question was coming.
That's not how it works, Joy. You're twisting the facts. I'm not twisting anything. I'm stating the reality. The reality is different.
Before Nicki Minaj ever sat across from the hosts of The View, the atmosphere surrounding her name had already shifted from music headlines to national debate. For years, Minaj's public image had been carefully layered. She was known for lyrical dominance, bold fashion, viral interviews, and a fan base that defended her fiercely online. She had survived industry feuds, chart battles, and public scrutiny, always emerging louder and more confident. Controversy was not new to her. In many ways, she thrived in it. But this situation felt different. This was not about album sales, award show drama, or rivalry with another artist. This was about a global health crisis, misinformation concerns, and the responsibility of influence. Suddenly, her words were being analyzed not as entertainment, but as potential public guidance for millions of people watching her every move. When she tweeted about a story involving vaccine side effects, she likely expected debate. What she did not expect was for the conversation to jump from social media to government briefings, medical experts, and daytime television panels within hours. News anchors discussed it. Doctors publicly responded. Government officials were asked about it in press conferences. And talk shows like The View did what they had always done best. They turned the topic into a discussion about accountability. Joy Behar and the panel did not frame the issue as celebrity gossip. They framed it as a serious matter of public trust. Behar's tone was firm. She questioned why someone with such a massive platform would share an unverified story. She emphasized the importance of science and reliable information. Her message was clear. Influence carries responsibility. The clip circulated quickly online. Fans of Minaj saw it as an attack. Others saw it as a necessary challenge. And Nicki Minaj herself responded, defending her right to ask questions and share what she had heard. She argued that she was not telling people what to do, but simply encouraging research and personal choice. Now the story had momentum. It was no longer a one-sided discussion on a talk show. It had become a public exchange between a celebrity and a television platform, with millions watching from both sides. The tension built quietly over days. Media outlets began writing about the disagreement. Social media threads exploded with arguments. People who had never watched The View before were suddenly watching clips. People who did not follow Nicki Minaj were now reading her tweets. Two worlds were colliding: entertainment and public policy. Behind the scenes, producers at The View were aware of the attention. They understood that if Minaj and Behar ever shared the same space, the topic could not simply be ignored. At the same time, daytime television has limits. It cannot become a shouting arena. It has to remain composed, structured, and watchable. That balance is difficult when emotions and opinions are already involved. Nicki Minaj, for her part, had shown in past interviews that she did not back down from uncomfortable questions. She had corrected interviewers mid-sentence. She had challenged narratives she felt were unfair. She was articulate, quick, and unafraid to defend herself in real time. Joy Behar had equal experience. Years of live television had trained her to stay calm under pressure. She knew how to ask pointed questions without raising her voice. She knew how to maintain composure even when guests became defensive. This was not going to be a clash of volume. It was going to be a clash of conviction. As the date approached where their paths would intersect in a live format connected to The View, viewers already had expectations. Some anticipated an apology. Others expected a confrontation. Many simply wanted to see whether the issue would be addressed directly or carefully avoided. And that uncertainty is what made the situation so charged. The show itself had to prepare. Research teams gathered exact quotes. Producers reviewed previous segments. Everyone understood that wording would matter. A single phrase could turn a calm discussion into a defensive exchange. Meanwhile, Nicki Minaj continued to speak on social media. She reiterated her stance. She made it clear she did not appreciate being portrayed as irresponsible. Her followers rallied behind her, questioning why a talk show panel felt entitled to criticize her. The lines were drawn long before any camera turned on. This was not a spontaneous disagreement. It was the continuation of an ongoing public dialogue that had never been resolved face to face. In the days leading up to the moment, the energy felt similar to two public figures preparing to address something both had already spoken about separately. The difference now was that they would be speaking in the same space at the same time, without the buffer of tweets or edited clips. Live television removes delay. It removes the safety of drafting a response. It reveals tone, body language, pauses, and reactions that social media cannot hide. And both Nicki Minaj and Joy Behar knew that. For Minaj, this was a chance to explain herself directly rather than through headlines. For Behar, it was an opportunity to ask the question that viewers had already heard her raise before. No one could predict how the exchange would unfold. But everyone understood one thing. Pretending the issue did not exist would feel unnatural. The audience would be waiting for it. The hosts would be aware of it. And Nicki Minaj would know it was coming. As the studio lights prepared to switch on, the show looked like it always did. The set was bright. The audience was seated. The table was arranged exactly as it had been for years. But the mood beneath the routine setup carried something heavier. Because this time, the conversation was not starting from zero. It was starting from a public disagreement that millions had already witnessed from a distance. And when that kind of history enters a live broadcast, even the smallest question can change everything.
You have to understand the context. Context, it's a simple yes or no. It's not that simple. You're oversimplifying. Am I?
When the cameras went live, nothing about the set suggested that this conversation carried weeks of public tension behind it. The host smiled. The audience applauded. Nicki Minaj appeared composed, confident, and relaxed in her chair. For the first few minutes, the discussion moved through familiar territory. Career highlights, music, creative process, light laughter. The kind of opening every daytime interview uses to settle both guest and viewers into comfort. But underneath the surface, there was a noticeable awareness at the table. A shared understanding that the topic sitting in the background had not disappeared. It was simply waiting for the right moment to be acknowledged. Joy Behar sat with her notes in front of her, listening carefully as Minaj spoke. She did not interrupt. She did not rush. Her posture remained calm, her tone measured. But when the conversation naturally slowed, she leaned forward slightly. And then she asked it. Not loudly, not aggressively, just directly. She referenced the tweet, the reaction it had caused, the discussion that had taken place on the show days earlier. Her wording was careful, but the message was unmistakable. She wanted Minaj to address it. The studio did not erupt. There was no gasp, but the energy changed instantly. Nicki Minaj's smile faded, not into anger, but into focus. She paused before answering. It was the kind of pause that stretches longer than expected on live television. Long enough for viewers at home to feel it. She looked at Behar, then at the rest of the panel, then back again. Her response was calm, controlled, and deliberate. She explained that she was not telling anyone what to do. She emphasized personal choice. She said she believed in asking questions and doing research. Her tone was steady but firm. She did not apologize for what she had said. Behar listened without interruption. Then she followed up. She asked whether Minaj understood how her words could be interpreted by millions of followers as guidance rather than curiosity. She framed it not as an accusation, but as a concern about influence. Again, the pause. Minaj's body language shifted slightly. She sat straighter. Her hands moved subtly as she spoke. Her voice remained even, but there was now an edge of seriousness that had not been present earlier in the interview. She repeated that she believed people should make their own decisions. She questioned why her tweet had been treated differently from countless other opinions shared online every day. She made it clear she felt unfairly singled out. The audience remained quiet. This was not entertainment anymore. It was a discussion playing out in real time, unscripted, without edits, and with millions watching. Behar did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She simply stated that when someone with Minaj's reach shares a story related to health, it becomes bigger than a personal opinion. Her tone was almost conversational, but the weight of her words filled the space between them. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence was noticeable. Not awkward, but heavy. The kind of silence that rarely happens on daytime television because hosts usually rush to fill it. This time, they didn't. Minaj broke it. She clarified again that she was encouraging people to think for themselves. She stressed that she was not against vaccines, but against being told she could not ask questions. She spoke with conviction, maintaining eye contact. Behar nodded, but did not retreat from her point. The exchange never turned into shouting. It never became chaotic. That is what made it so intense. Two strong personalities holding their ground, speaking calmly, but refusing to shift. Other hosts at the table watched carefully, occasionally stepping in with softer comments to keep the conversation balanced. But the focus remained on Minaj and Behar. Viewers at home could see it in their expressions. This was not a rehearsed segment. This was a genuine, unscripted moment where a celebrity and a talk show host were confronting a public disagreement face to face. Minaj's composure never broke, but the warmth from earlier in the interview had disappeared. Her answers were precise now, calculated. She chose each word carefully. Behar maintained her steady tone, but her questions remained pointed. She did not let the subject drift away. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but it felt longer. Because every sentence carried the weight of what had been said online, on television, and in the media days before. And everyone in the studio knew this was the moment viewers had been waiting for. Eventually, another host gently redirected the discussion to a different topic. The shift was subtle but noticeable. Laughter returned, though lighter than before. The interview continued, but the mood had permanently changed. Something had been addressed. Not resolved, but acknowledged. And that acknowledgement, happening live without edits, was what made the moment unforgettable. As the cameras kept rolling, the audience could sense that what they had just witnessed was not typical daytime television. It was a rare instance where influence, accountability, and celebrity collided in a calm but powerful exchange. But what happened after that question, after that silence, and after that shift in energy, revealed just how much the atmosphere in the room had changed. The moment the conversation shifted away from the topic, the relief in the studio was subtle but unmistakable. Smiles returned to faces around the table, but they were lighter now, more cautious. The rhythm of the interview tried to find its earlier pace, yet something had clearly changed. The audience, which had remained unusually quiet during the exchange, responded with polite laughter when prompted, but the energy no longer felt effortless. Nicki Minaj remained composed. She answered the next questions professionally, speaking about her music, her projects, and her creative process. But the ease from the opening minutes of the interview did not fully return. Her posture stayed upright. Her responses were measured. There was a new level of awareness in how she chose her words. Joy Behar also shifted back into the role viewers were used to seeing. She smiled, nodded, and allowed other hosts to lead the discussion. But there was a noticeable stillness in her demeanor, as if she understood that the most important part of the interview had already happened. Behind the scenes, producers and crew members could feel it too. Live television often carries unpredictable moments, but this one had not been loud or dramatic. It had been controlled, respectful, and intense. That kind of exchange lingers in the air longer than raised voices ever could. The audience clapped at the appropriate cues, but their attention seemed sharper now. People were not just watching for entertainment. They were watching closely, aware that they had just witnessed something rare. A public disagreement addressed calmly and directly in real time. When the segment finally ended and the show cut to commercial, the shift became more visible. The hosts leaned back in their chairs. Papers were adjusted. Quick glances were exchanged across the table. No one looked shaken, but everyone looked thoughtful. The kind of thoughtful that follows a serious conversation rather than a light interview. Nicki Minaj spoke briefly with someone off camera, still maintaining her composure. There was no visible frustration, no visible relief. Just professionalism. But her expression remained serious, as if she was still processing the weight of what had just been discussed. In the control room, producers replayed the exchange in their minds. Not because anything had gone wrong, but because they understood how significant it was. This was the kind of live television moment that would be clipped, shared, and analyzed within hours. And it was. As soon as the show aired, segments of the conversation began circulating online. Viewers who had watched live started posting about the exchange. Those who had missed it searched for clips. Social media platforms filled with discussions, not about shouting or drama, but about tone, wording, and body language. People debated who made the stronger point. Some praised Behar for asking a necessary question. Others praised Minaj for defending herself calmly and confidently. What stood out was that neither side appeared reckless. Both appeared deliberate. That is what made the moment powerful. News outlets picked up the story quickly. Headlines did not describe a confrontation. They described a tense but respectful exchange. Analysts noted how rare it is for a daytime talk show to host such a serious discussion without it becoming chaotic. The View itself received attention for allowing the conversation to happen naturally rather than avoiding it. Viewers recognized that the show had not tried to sidestep controversy. It had addressed it directly, in front of millions. For Nicki Minaj, the immediate reaction online was mixed but intense. Her fans applauded her for standing firm. Critics continued to question her stance. But many neutral viewers commented on how calmly she handled the discussion under pressure. Joy Behar also faced reactions. Supporters appreciated her consistency in asking difficult questions. Others felt she had put the guest in an uncomfortable position. But even critics acknowledged that her tone remained respectful throughout. Back in the studio, the remainder of the episode moved forward like any other broadcast. Yet the earlier exchange lingered in the minds of everyone present. Conversations during breaks were quieter, more reflective, because what had just occurred was not a viral outburst. It was something rarer, a live moment where both sides spoke carefully, knowing the entire country was watching. As the show wrapped and the credits rolled, the sense remained that this segment would not be forgotten quickly. Not because of drama, but because of how controlled, honest, and real it felt. In the hours that followed, clips spread rapidly across platforms. Comment sections filled. Opinion pieces were written. The discussion moved from the studio to the internet, where millions who had not watched live could now see exactly how the exchange unfolded. And as viewers replayed those few minutes, they began to realize that the impact of this moment was not limited to the studio. It was about to shape how both Nicki Minaj and Joy Behar were perceived long after the cameras had turned off. In the days after the broadcast, the conversation did not fade. It widened. Clips of the exchange circulated across social media, news sites, and discussion forums. People who had never watched The View searched for the segment. Others who followed Nicki Minaj closely watched the clip repeatedly, analyzing every word, every pause, every expression. What stood out to many viewers was not conflict, but composure. There had been no shouting, no disrespect, no interruption. Instead, there had been something far more revealing. Two public figures standing firmly in their positions while remaining calm under the pressure of live television. That tone is what gave the moment its lasting impact. For Nicki Minaj, the interview became part of a larger conversation about celebrity influence in the digital age. Commentators began discussing how artists and entertainers, once separated from political and public health debates, were now deeply intertwined with them because of social media reach. Her appearance on the show became an example used in articles and discussions about the responsibility that comes with having millions of followers. Some viewers praised her for defending her right to speak openly and question narratives. Others remained critical of her original comments. But many agreed on one thing: she handled the live discussion with control and clarity. For Joy Behar, the moment reinforced her reputation as a host willing to ask uncomfortable questions without turning the conversation into spectacle. She did not press for drama. She did not attempt to embarrass her guest. She simply asked what many viewers at home had already been asking themselves. That balance between firmness and respect became a talking point in media analysis. Commentators noted how rare it is for daytime television to maintain that level of seriousness without losing control of the conversation. The View itself was praised for allowing the exchange to unfold naturally. In an era where many interviews are carefully managed to avoid tension, this segment felt authentic. The show did not pretend controversy did not exist. It addressed it calmly, live, and in front of an audience. As weeks passed, the clip continued to resurface whenever discussions about celebrity responsibility, misinformation, or media accountability came up. It became a reference point, not because it was explosive, but because it was honest. What made the moment endure was the way it reflected a changing media landscape. Years ago, a disagreement between a celebrity and a talk show might have remained within the episode. Now, it travels instantly across platforms, reaching millions who were not even watching at the time. That shift means that every live television moment carries more weight than ever before. This exchange between Nicki Minaj and Behar showed how that weight can be handled without chaos. It showed that difficult conversations can happen publicly without turning into spectacle. For viewers, it offered something rare, a real discussion where both sides spoke without shouting and listened without interrupting. In a media environment often filled with loud arguments, the quiet intensity of this moment felt different. And that is why it still matters. It was not about proving who was right or wrong. It was about seeing how influence, accountability, and public platforms intersect in real time. It was about witnessing how words spoken online can lead to serious questions on national television. And it was about how two experienced public figures navigated that situation under pressure. Long after the episode aired, the clip continued to be shared as an example of how live television can capture genuine human moments that no script could fully prepare for. Because sometimes the most powerful television is not the loudest. It is the most controlled. It is the moment where a question is asked calmly, an answer is given carefully, and the entire room understands that something important is being discussed. That is what happened between Nicki Minaj and Behar on The View. Not a fight, not a spectacle. A moment of accountability, handled with composure, that revealed just how powerful live television can still be. Subscribe to the Truth Narrator, like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and share this story with others who appreciate real moments captured in real time.